Okay, so now let's go on to what this tabernacle of David is all about, the Sukkah of David. Let's have a look at the word translated tabernacle in Amos 9:11. Alright, so this isn't rocket science. You can just look up these words in the concordance. Sukkah. It's translated a booth, a cottage, a covert, a pavilion, a tabernacle, a tent in the King James Version, or the King Yaakov Version, I don't know. Sukkah. So let's have a look at where this is used. So Sukkah is related to the word Sukkot, but it's when we talk about the tabernacle in the wilderness, it's usually the word Mishkan or Ohel Moed, tent of meeting or something like that. But this word is Sukkah, and it's not a normal word for the tabernacle, but it is the usual word for tabernacles, as in the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. So this verse in Isaiah 4:5-6, and the Lord will create upon every dwelling place in Mount Zion, and upon her assemblies, a cloud and smoke by day, and a shining of a flame of fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defence, and there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, for a covert from the storm and from rain. So this is just an example of where the word tabernacle is Sukkah, and there's not too many of them. There's not too many where the word Sukkah is used in this sense. So sometimes it's good to have a little bit of Hebrew. Another place where the word Sukkah is used, and the daughter of Zion, this is Isaiah 1, verse 8, and the daughter of Zion is left as a cottage in a vineyard, as a lodge in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city. It's very interesting that we are related to Zion. We've come into the heavenly Jerusalem, Mount Zion. And we're like a cottage in a vineyard. Remember, the house of Israel is a vineyard. So that's a little bit of correspondence there. And it's interesting in a besieged city, because the word is Nitzorah, related to the word for Christian in Hebrew. Except the Lord of hosts had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sodom, and we should have been like unto Gomorrah. The condition of the house of Israel before the regathering is likened unto Sodom and Gomorrah. 1 Peter has something to say about this. So we'll look at more about Sodom and Gomorrah later. So, a sukkah is less enduring than a house, but easier to put back together. So when it describes the tabernacle of David that's fallen, if I have a tent and the poles caves in, that's easy to put up. But if my house gets blown down by a tornado, takes a bit more time. So one of the ideas of a fallen tabernacle and putting it back together is that it's not hard to put it back together again. So if this refers to the house of David, it's not hard for God to wake up the sons of David. It's not hard to, get some of those Jews that are descendants of David and wake them up. God just needs to flick a switch. They've got the Torah all in their head anyway. It's just a matter of flicking a switch and here am I. It's very interesting in Jewish, and during Sukkot there is a prayer. Harakaman hu yakim lanu et Sukkat David hanafelet. May the all-merciful one establish the fallen sukkah of David. And that's called the Birkat Hamazon, or the blessing of the meal during Sukkot. So during Sukkot, the Jews recognise there's a relationship between the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, and David's fallen sukkah, because this most likely came about because they looked at this prophecy and they said, it's using the word sukkah for David's fallen tabernacle. So we're going to pray for David's fallen tabernacle during tabernacles, during Sukkot. So may the all-merciful one re-establish the fallen sukkah, Sukkot Hanafelet, Sukkah of David Hanafelet. Also, it's interesting that Nephilet is related to the word Nephilim, fallen. Yeshua came to redeem the fallen, not the Nephilim of Genesis. I'm not saying he came to redeem giants and all the man-eating giants. I'm saying he came to restore the fallen. It describes in Lamentations the daughter of Zion that had fallen from heaven to earth. That's a topic of another story, but I think there's a lot more that has gone on in history than we realise. And we're part of something that God is restoring. We're fallen, and we're related to that daughter of Zion, to that heavenly Jerusalem, Mount Zion. On Rosh Hashanah, trumpets, the king is crowned, but on Sukkot, the joy of the kingdom is celebrated. So there's a connection between David's fallen Sukkah and the feast of Sukkot. During trumpets, the king is crowned, but Sukkot, a few feasts later, we're entering the joy of his reign. And Sukkot is all about joy. You're actually commanded to be happy. So it's related to the Sabbath. God's saying, look, those 6 days of work are over, and those 6 rather hard judgment-related feasts are over, and now we're entering into the good times. And so this gives you a little bit of an idea of the connection between Sukkah, the Sukkah of David, and Sukkot. The Sukkah of David that is fallen, and Sukkot. And we've been praying for 2,000 years, our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. So the kingdom is going to come locally to Israel, and then with the re-establishment of David's fallen tabernacle, with the regathering of Israel and Judah in the land before the tribulation, and then a time of blessing, and the bride falls asleep, and then she's woken up during the tribulation, she gets herself right, she's looked after, and then the King of Kings comes, and the kingdom comes not just locally to Israel, but globally to the whole world, and that's going to be a great day. Again, this is something that Christians would entirely miss, and God bless them. I'm not saying that looking down at anybody. God, thank goodness Christians have been looking forward to the second coming of our Lord, and I'm looking forward to that too. But there's some other prophecy about David's fallen tabernacle that's going to be fulfilled before then. And it's related to what God's doing in our hearts right now, awakening us to the Torah. And then that'll be followed by bringing us back to the Middle East and then to Israel itself. So let's have a look at some of what some Jewish thought regarding the links between the temple and the Feast of Sukkot. Might give us a little bit of an understanding of what this is all about, flesh it out a little bit more. So the connection between Sukkot and the temple was not lost on the prophets. Zechariah's description of the Messianic era, which is the Haftarah for the first day of Sukkot, focuses on the universal temple worship within the framework of Sukkot. So the Sukkot and the temple are related. Okay? The Sukkah is related to the temple. Proclaiming that those members of all nations who have survived the period of destruction that will precede the Messianic era will unite to serve God and come to Jerusalem temple to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. And isn't that what Amos 9 was talking about? The possessing the remnant of Edom. Israel returns to the land and possesses the remnant of Edom. And that's quoted in the book of Acts chapter 15, which is related to what God has been doing these 2,000 years, gathering a people for his name. And that, at the end of that, we're going to return to the land, and God's going to establish the tabernacle of David that has fallen. And again, I don't expect everyone to get all of this right now, because a lot of this is perhaps new, but I am recording this. I'm going to get it onto YouTube. There is a PDF version of these slides you can look through at your own time, download it from the internet, and look at this and ponder over it and think about it prayerfully. Similarly, the prophet Haggai exhorts the people on the 21st of the 7th month, the last day of Sukkot, not to despair about the state of the second temple. So during Sukkot, which is a happy time, we're not despairing, but we're looking forward to God restoring things. because God promises that it will eventually be even greater than the first. So the next temple is going to be greater. Every time the tabernacle or the temple were destroyed, the next one got bigger. Until we get to, the one in Ezekiel 40 is a big temple. But it actually gets bigger when we have the new heavens and new earth and the heavenly Jerusalem comes down. There's no need of a temple because we are that temple and the Lamb is the centre of it all. So it's a big thing that comes. It's like a big, it's like the mothership and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's a big deal. In fact, it's so big that they have to have a new earth to put it on. So the temples keep getting bigger. So you don't want to kill God's man because he's going to come back even bigger. Like Zechariah, this passage is located within the context that is describing the ultimate restoration of the temple's glory during the Messianic era. Alright, so this is just some thoughts that Jewish people have said and thought, and I just found this on the internet and thought I'd pass it by you, because there's not a lot of commentary on this sort of stuff in the Christian world. It's kind of might be just some little few words and that's it. But this is actually quite a crucial verse. So we've had a look at the temple, now have a look at the relationship between the tabernacle and the Feast of Sukkot. So we looked at the temple and Sukkot, now here's a few verses about the tabernacle. Moses delivered the second set of tablets to the Jewish people during Tishri, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but essentially the Tishri was when he got second tablets, and that during this time the tabernacle was being constructed. The tabernacle was being constructed during Sukkot. It was raised up on the first day of Nisan, I believe, but the first day of the first month. But it was being constructed during Sukkot. So here again there's a relationship between the Feast of Sukkot and the tabernacle. So when we're reading this thing about the tabernacle of David that has fallen, not only is it related to David and his line and David himself, but it's also related to the temple worship, the temple itself and the tabernacle. So when God reestablishes the tabernacle of David that has fallen, his patriarchal line, his kingly line, when the house of Judah and the house of Israel are back in the land, he's also going to reestablish the temple and the temple worship. Can you see that?
I know she said that he delivered the tablets to the Jewish people. You mean the Israelites?
Well, I'm quoting a Jew, so they're only seeing the Jewish people.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But good question. So let's move on. I won't read all that. And that's from a lady named Malka Simkovich, just someone I found across the internet. All right. This is very interesting because the Jews say that the temple was destroyed, the previous temple, the one that Jesus walked through, because of baseless hatred. Well, I can't think of a greater hatred than the baseless hatred the Pharisees had, the religious leaders had for Yeshua. And they say, because of this baseless hatred, the only way that the temple is going to be rebuilt, it is necessary for the Jewish nation to rectify this sin and join together in unconditional love for one another. This is one of the reasons that I wanted to say to everyone that we need to love one another. Because if our Torah is leading us, we're all going to disagree on things, but if it's going to cause us to hate each other and get that bitter, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it because the very reason the temple was destroyed was because of baseless hatred. And for the Jewish people, they need to deal with a certain baseless hatred. Judah had a hatred, and the brothers had a hatred for Joseph. But Judah repented and became a real leader. And so there's going to come a generation of Jews that will also repent for their baseless hatred of Yeshua in the same way. And according to their own words, the temple that they long to build is not going to be built without dealing with their baseless hatred for one another. They're hopelessly divided amongst themselves to a certain degree. We're even more hopelessly divided.